The absolute biological denial of the human species is fascinating. You actively expose your internal organs to highly toxic liquids like vodka and beer, and then spend decades inventing magical fairy tales to convince yourselves it's somehow medicine. Pay attention, because your biology does not care about your marketing myths.
For decades, clever advertising has promoted comforting, highly deceptive myths about alcohol. The public has been conditioned to believe that specific drinks can neutralize toxicity, heavy food absorbs poison, or certain wines are heart-healthy. Today, we are entirely stripping away the marketing. We are exposing the 30 most dangerous, widely believed alcohol myths with cold, unforgiving medical science. This is the uncompromising biochemical truth about what really happens when ethanol enters your system. Fact 1. Red liquid is good for the heart. For years, the public was heavily misled by outdated claims that exposing the body to specific fermented liquids provided ultimate cardiovascular protection. The World Health Organization has now officially and definitively stated that there is absolutely zero safe level of ethanol exposure for the human body. While certain organic liquids contain a naturally occurring antioxidant called resveratrol, the actual chemical concentration is remarkably pathetic. To acquire a medically useful protective dose of resveratrol, the human body would have to process such an astronomical volume of toxic ethanol that the liver would completely and irreversibly fail, long before the heart saw a single microscopic benefit. It is merely an expensive, highly toxic hazard hiding behind a facade of health. Fact 2. Alcohol helps you sleep. When the human body is subjected to severe stress, many mistakenly introduce ethanol into their system, genuinely believing it is a biological remedy for insomnia. While the chemical is a powerful central nervous system depressant that will force the brain to lose consciousness, it simultaneously destroys the actual biological quality of the rest. As the liver desperately attempts to metabolize the toxin, the resulting chemical reaction aggressively blocks the brain from entering the REM sleep cycle. This is the critical, deep restorative phase the body requires for cellular repair. The organism might remain paralyzed and unconscious in a bed for 8 solid hours, but the brain is running a frantic chemical marathon. The result is waking up medically sedated, exhausted, and physically drained. Fact 3. Liquor keeps you warm. The widespread survival myth that introducing ethanol into the bloodstream provides warmth in freezing environments has actively resulted in severe medical casualties. The chemical acts as an aggressive, fast-acting vasodilator. It rapidly forces the blood vessels near the surface of the skin to open wide, pushing warm blood away from the vital internal organs. The nervous system registers a sudden, powerful illusion of heat on the skin. However, in reality, the body is actively and aggressively venting its precious core temperature directly into the freezing external air. By using this chemical to simulate warmth, the organism is drastically lowering its internal survival temperature and accelerating a direct physiological path straight toward fatal hypothermia. Fact 4. Low-calorie variants provide hydration. Marketing campaigns frequently present diluted, low-calorie variations of ethanol as refreshing, hydrating liquids suitable for hot environments or physical exertion. The biochemical reality tells a highly destructive, dehydrating story. Absolutely all ethanol, regardless of its specific formulation or water content, acts as a powerful chemical diuretic inside the human body. Once the toxin enters the bloodstream, it aggressively blocks the pituitary gland from releasing vasopressin, the crucial antidiuretic hormone required for cellular fluid retention. Without this vital hormone, the kidneys are forced into severe overdrive, aggressively expelling significantly more liquid than was originally introduced. The body is not being hydrated. The internal organs are being actively wrung dry. Fact 5. Alcohol kills brain cells. A common preventative warning suggests that every single exposure to the chemical instantly and permanently murders thousands of neurons. While chronic, long-term toxicity will eventually cause the physical mass of the human brain to literally shrink and atrophy, A single exposure does not instantly kill the cells. However, the reality is equally devastating. Instead of outright cellular death, the ethanol actively attacks and damages the delicate dendrites, the vital, branching communication pathways at the ends of the neurons. The physical brain cell manages to survive the chemical assault, but its biological ability to send and receive rapid electrical messages is severely compromised. The internal wiring of the nervous system is chemically blinded and forcefully degraded. Fact 6. Caffeine neutralizes the toxicity. When the human body begins to fail under the weight of severe intoxication, the universal, desperate response is to introduce a massive dose of concentrated caffeine into the system. The belief is that the stimulant will chemically burn away the depressant. This is a terrifying, highly dangerous biological illusion. Caffeine does absolutely nothing to accelerate the complex metabolic filtration process inside the liver, which is the only organ capable of removing the toxin from the blood. The caffeine simply overrides the heavy sedative effects, masking the severe physiological exhaustion. The organism is not sober. It is merely experiencing highly caffeinated, wide-awake toxicity, retaining the exact same compromised motor skills, but gaining a false, lethal sense of confidence. Fact 7. Cold shock reverses the effects. Exposing a highly intoxicated organism to a sudden, brutal blast of freezing water is a common, entirely misguided method used to attempt an instant reversal of the chemical impairment. The extreme thermal shock to the nervous system will certainly cause the heart rate to violently spike and force the eyes open, simulating alertness. However, the actual blood alcohol concentration remains mathematically and biologically identical. The human liver processes the chemical payload at a strict, unyielding, and unchangeable metabolic rate. It is medically impossible to freeze the toxin out of the vascular system or shock the liver into working faster. The resulting state is not sobriety. It is simply a state of being freezing, physically miserable, and completely toxic. Fact 8. Heavy food absorbs the chemical. The traditional attempt to introduce a massive, heavy volume of saturated fat and carbohydrates into the stomach late at night is viewed as a strategic biological defense to absorb the toxins. Unfortunately, the physiological timing is entirely incorrect. By the time severe impairment is registered by the brain, the vast majority of the chemical has already bypassed the stomach, passed into the small intestine, and fully saturated the bloodstream. Ingesting heavy matter at this late stage absorbs absolutely nothing. Instead, it forces an already overworked, heavily inflamed pancreas and exhausted liver to suddenly process a massive digestive burden while they are desperately failing to filter out the active poison. It merely guarantees severe gastrointestinal trauma. Fact 9. Emptying the stomach lowers blood toxicity. The forceful, desperate attempt to physically empty the stomach contents is a common reaction based on the false biological assumption that it will instantly lower the toxic levels in the blood and prevent organ failure. This represents a fundamental misunderstanding of human absorption rates. The chemical is absorbed into the vascular system with extreme rapidity. The act of vomiting only clears out the residual, unabsorbed liquid currently sitting idle in the gastric chamber. It does absolutely zero to extract, neutralize, or remove the heavy volume of toxins that are already actively bathing the brain tissue and filtering through the liver. The organism might experience a brief moment of physical pressure relief, but the critical blood toxicity level remains dangerously unchanged. Fact 10. Toxins can be expelled through sweat. Utilizing an extreme heat environment, such as a sauna, to physically force the body to sweat out the residual chemical toxins is one of the most incredibly dangerous, mathematically flawed decisions possible. Human biology does not function like a permeable sponge. The liver is exclusively responsible for metabolizing roughly 90% of the chemical payload. A tiny, mathematically irrelevant fraction, less than 1% is excreted through the respiratory system and sweat glands. Exposing the body to extreme heat does not accelerate the hepatic detox process. Instead, it triggers rapid, severe dehydration in an organism that is already critically stripped of essential fluids and electrolytes, placing massive, potentially fatal stress directly on the cardiovascular system.
Are you furiously taking notes yet? The amount of effort your species puts into inventing completely unscientific, magical remedies to avoid accepting the basic laws of chemistry is staggering. Keep your eyes on the screen. We are heading into the morning after myths next, and I assure you, your favorite remedies are a complete medical disaster.
Fact 11. Re-exposure cures the withdrawal. The dangerous physiological concept of introducing a new dose of the exact same chemical to cure the toxic aftermath of previous exposure is a fundamental misunderstanding of biological addiction. The morning after sickness is not simply a headache. It is a severe, acute withdrawal syndrome as the central nervous system violently reacts to the sudden absence of the depressant. Adding more of the toxin to the bloodstream does not cure the extensive cellular damage or hydrate the brain tissue. It merely acts as a temporary anesthetic, briefly masking the severe neurological withdrawal symptoms while simultaneously delaying the inevitable metabolic crash. The body is not healing. It is actively extending the duration of the biological trauma and establishing physical dependency. Fact 12. Analgesics before sleep prevent pain. The preventative strategy of swallowing over-the-counter painkillers while the bloodstream is highly saturated with the toxic chemical is a recipe for severe, irreversible organ trauma. Acetaminophen requires the liver for basic metabolism. When the liver is already overwhelmed, inflamed, and failing to filter the primary toxin, adding acetaminophen triggers a catastrophic biochemical reaction that can lead directly to sudden hepatic failure. Alternatively, utilizing ibuprofen or aspirin while the chemical is present actively strips away the protective mucosal lining of the stomach wall. This reckless, highly volatile chemical combination drastically increases the immediate risk of severe gastrointestinal bleeding and the rapid formation of agonizing stomach ulcers. Fact 13. Mixing variations causes the trauma. The traditional biological myth warning against combining different colored or flavored variations of the chemical is a complete physiological fabrication. The human digestive system and the liver do not possess the biological capability to recognize, categorize, or care about the specific order in which different toxic solvents are introduced. The severity of the subsequent systemic breakdown is dictated by only two absolute scientific metrics: the total accumulated volume of the chemical absorbed into the bloodstream and the resulting level of severe cellular dehydration. Blaming the agonizing morning pain on the sequence of exposure is merely a psychological coping mechanism to avoid admitting that the sheer, overwhelming quantity of the toxin was the actual cause of the physical suffering. Fact 14. Premium filtration prevents damage. The expensive illusion that highly filtered, premium-priced liquids will somehow spare the human body from toxic consequences is a brilliant triumph of marketing over organic chemistry. While cheaper, unrefined variants may contain marginally higher trace amounts of fermentation byproducts, the primary, overwhelming active ingredient in all of these liquids is absolutely identical. When the human liver metabolizes this chemical, regardless of its retail price tag, it inevitably converts it into acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is a highly aggressive, incredibly toxic carcinogen that directly attacks cellular DNA and causes the severe, agonizing symptoms of systemic poisoning. The liver does not read the price tag. It only processes the identical, highly destructive chemical payload. Fact 15. Heavy fats cure the gastric inflammation. The popular tradition of consuming a massive plate of heavy, greasy, high-fat matter to absorb the lingering toxins is a biological assault on an already failing digestive system. Upon waking from a state of acute chemical toxicity, the entire gastric lining is severely inflamed, irritated, and highly vulnerable. Introducing a heavy, difficult-to-digest mountain of saturated fat directly into this compromised environment does not absorb the remaining poison. Instead, it forces the completely exhausted, overworked liver and the inflamed pancreas to suddenly generate massive amounts of digestive enzymes. This aggressive biological demand guarantees severe acid reflux, prolongs the gastrointestinal distress, and forces damaged organs to work brutally hard when they desperately require absolute rest. Fact 16. Specific variations act as stimulants. The widespread cultural myth that specific botanical-based variations of the liquid function as a biological upper or stimulant is biochemically impossible. Absolutely all variations of this chemical, without a single exception, are classified by medical science as potent central nervous system depressants. They aggressively slow down brain function, depress the respiratory system, and actively inhibit neurological firing. If a human organism exhibits highly energetic, erratic, or hyperactive behavior after exposure, it is absolutely not a chemical stimulation. It is simply the total, toxic suppression of the brain's prefrontal cortex, which completely removes normal behavioral filters and common sense, creating a dangerous, temporary illusion of boundless, reckless energy. Fact 17. Botanical additives cause hallucinations. The romantic historical legend of certain green-tinted liquids causing the human brain to experience vivid, mind-altering hallucinations is entirely fabricated. The supposed hallucinogenic botanical compound, thujone, is present in such microscopic, mathematically insignificant trace amounts that it has absolutely zero psychedelic effect on the neurological system. The terrifying visions, the erratic behavior, and the severe physical degradation experienced by historical figures were not caused by magical plant properties. They were the direct, brutal, and tragic result of exposing the body to liquids with an astronomical, highly dangerous chemical concentration, often reaching 80%, combined with the rampant, untreated neurological devastation of late-stage diseases prevalent during that era. Fact 18. Dark coloration indicates health benefits. The assumption that deep, richly colored variations of the liquid contain beneficial, health-promoting properties is a dangerous inversion of toxicology. The dark coloration and heavy profiles are primarily the result of a massive concentration of chemical impurities known as congeners. Congeners are toxic, biologically complex byproducts of the aging process, including trace amounts of heavy, dangerous alcohols. When the human body attempts to metabolize these dense, complex impurities alongside the standard chemical load, the biological stress is significantly amplified. The presence of these dark chemical compounds is scientifically proven to drastically increase the severity, duration, and agonizing pain of the resulting neurological breakdown. Fact 19. Thermal processing eradicates the toxins. The culinary reassurance that adding the chemical to a simmering sauce or a baked dish completely evaporates the toxic elements is a dangerous mathematical myth. Exhaustive chemical testing on thermally processed foods has proven this entirely false. If the liquid is added to a boiling mixture and removed from the heat immediately, up to 85% of the toxic chemical remains perfectly intact within the food. Even after continuously simmering a dish for a full 15 minutes, 40% of the chemical payload is still actively present and ready for absorption. It requires over 2.5 hours of continuous, severe, high-temperature baking to reduce the trace to 5%. The heat alters the physical state, but the poison stubbornly survives. Fact 20. Extended aging always improves the value. The cultural obsession with storing old glass bottles in dark spaces, believing that time magically enhances the biological value of the liquid, ignores the basic, uncompromising laws of organic chemistry. The vast, overwhelming majority of commercially produced variations are chemically engineered for immediate biological processing within a strict 1 to 2 year window. They fundamentally lack the precise, rare balance of organic compounds required to survive decades of static storage. If an ordinary container is locked away for 10 years, The delicate organic matter does not mature into an elite, healthy vintage. Instead, it aggressively oxidizes and degrades, rapidly transforming the expensive liquid into a highly acidic, unpalatable, and completely ruined volume of biological waste.
You survived the morning after myths, but now we enter the truly terrifying territory: your brain. You think a few beers make you a genius at the pool table, and you think a blackout just means you took a nap. The neurological reality is much, much darker.
Fact 21. Drunk people tell the truth. The ancient proverb, in vino veritas, or in wine there is truth, is a complete neurological misunderstanding. Society believes that drinking whiskey or wine reveals a person's deeply hidden, honest thoughts. In reality, ethanol chemically disables the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is the command center responsible for logic, social filters, and consequence evaluation. When this area is medically suppressed, the individual is not revealing profound, hidden truths. They are simply vocalizing the very first, random, unfiltered impulse that crosses their chemically impaired mind. It is not honesty, it is just a severe cognitive malfunction. You are listening to a brain that has temporarily lost its ability to regulate data, resulting in chaotic, meaningless babble. Fact 22. A few drinks improve your skills. Many adults genuinely believe that having 2 beers or a shot of tequila actively improves their physical coordination in games like billiards or darts. This is a highly dangerous physiological illusion. The exact moment ethanol enters the bloodstream, it immediately begins to degrade fine motor skills, spatial awareness, and hand-eye coordination. You do not physically become a better player. The chemical merely suppresses the central nervous system enough to eliminate your natural anxiety and self-doubt. You are playing significantly worse, but the alcohol provides a false, chemically induced arrogance that makes you blindly believe you are performing at a masterful level. It is a biological trick of confidence masking severe physical impairment. Fact 23. Blacking out means passing out. A terrifyingly common myth is that experiencing a blackout means the person physically passed out and lost consciousness. Medically, an alcohol-induced blackout is known as anterograde amnesia. You are completely awake, walking, talking, and making highly dangerous decisions, but the massive spike of ethanol in your hippocampus has completely shut down the brain's ability to transfer short-term experiences into long-term storage. Your brain's hard drive has effectively stopped recording. The organism functions entirely on autopilot, essentially operating as a biological zombie with zero data retention. Waking up with missing hours does not mean you were asleep. It means your brain's memory circuitry temporarily failed under extreme toxic load. Fact 24. High tolerance means a strong liver. Heavy drinkers often boast about having a high tolerance, believing it means their liver is exceptionally strong and processes liquor efficiently. This is a catastrophic misinterpretation of human biology. A high tolerance has absolutely nothing to do with liver function. It actually means your brain receptors have been repeatedly bombarded by toxic ethanol for so long that they have physically mutated and chemically adapted to survive the constant poisoning. Your brain is aggressively rewiring itself just to function under a toxic load. Meanwhile, your liver, which cannot build a tolerance, is still taking the exact same brutal, destructive damage from every single ounce of vodka or bourbon you consume. You are not invincible. Your brain is just ignoring the alarms. Fact 25. Alcohol is an aphrodisiac. For centuries, champagne and wine have been aggressively marketed as romantic aphrodisiacs. The physiological reality is a brutal contradiction. While ethanol effectively suppresses the psychological inhibitions and social anxieties that might prevent intimacy, it acts as a severe chemical depressant on the physical body. High levels of alcohol significantly depress the central nervous system, aggressively reducing physical sensitivity and restricting the critical blood flow required for physical arousal. The chemical creates the psychological desire while simultaneously guaranteeing profound physical dysfunction. You are chemically programming your brain to want something that your poisoned, depressed nervous system is completely unable to physically execute. Fact 26. Men and women intoxicate equally. A pervasive myth suggests that a man and a woman of the exact same body weight can drink the exact same amount of beer or vodka and experience the exact same level of intoxication. This is anatomically and physiologically impossible. Female biology naturally contains a significantly lower percentage of body water, meaning the identical dose of ethanol is forced into a much more concentrated toxic solution within the bloodstream. Furthermore, women possess significantly less alcohol dehydrogenase, the specific stomach enzyme required to break down ethanol before it reaches the blood. Therefore, consuming the identical volume of alcohol will always result in a substantially higher, more dangerous blood alcohol concentration for women, regardless of matching body mass. Fact 27. The Asian flush means getting drunk faster. When individuals of Asian descent experience a rapid, bright red facial flushing after a single glass of wine or beer, society often dismisses it as a sign of being a lightweight. In clinical reality, this Asian flush is a severe genetic mutation known as ALDH2 deficiency. Their bodies convert the ethanol into acetaldehyde, a highly toxic, cancer-causing byproduct, but they genetically lack the specific enzyme required to break that toxin down any further. The violent red flushing, rapid heart rate, and nausea are not signs of intoxication. They are the symptoms of an acute, severe, toxic allergic reaction to a buildup of pure carcinogens in the bloodstream. It is a massive biological warning system, not a low tolerance. Fact 28. A full stomach prevents intoxication. Eating a massive, heavy meal right before drinking whiskey or beer is widely believed to act as a physical shield that prevents the alcohol from entering the bloodstream. Food does absolutely nothing to neutralize, absorb, or destroy ethanol. A heavy meal simply causes the pyloric valve at the bottom of your stomach to snap shut, locking the food and the alcohol together for digestion. This completely prevents the alcohol from dropping into the small intestine, where rapid absorption occurs. You are not preventing intoxication, you are merely delaying the inevitable. The exact same volume of toxic ethanol will eventually enter your bloodstream and hit your brain. It will just happen roughly 45 minutes later than you expected. Fact 29. Energy drinks allow you to drink safely. The modern bar trend of aggressively mixing heavy liquor, like vodka, with highly caffeinated energy drinks is sold as a way to stay awake longer without getting sloppy. This combination is a lethal physiological trap. The massive dose of stimulant caffeine completely masks the severe central nervous system depression caused by the alcohol. Because the caffeine artificially forces your eyes open and your heart to race, your brain loses the ability to accurately gauge how dangerously poisoned your body actually is. You feel completely fine, prompting you to consume significantly more alcohol than your organs can survive, frequently leading to sudden, catastrophic alcohol poisoning, extreme tachycardia, and unexpected cardiac arrest. Fact 30. Aspirin before drinking prevents hangovers. Taking an over-the-counter painkiller like aspirin immediately before a night of drinking wine or beer is a popular preventative strike against tomorrow's headache. This is a severe medical error. Aspirin naturally irritates the delicate mucosal lining of the stomach, and adding concentrated ethanol multiplies that corrosive inflammation exponentially, practically guaranteeing severe gastric bleeding. Even worse, aspirin actively inhibits the specific gastric enzymes responsible for the initial breakdown of alcohol. By taking the pill, you are actively disabling your body's first line of chemical defense. This forces a significantly higher percentage of raw, unprocessed ethanol directly into your bloodstream, making you get dangerously intoxicated much faster. Well, there you have it. The next time someone tells you that a glass of wine is good for their heart, or tries to sober up with a freezing shower, you can confidently let them know they are biochemically delusional. Keep your liver safe, stop trusting marketing myths, and remember, biology always wins in the end. Stay paranoid, my friends.